Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this Zoom meeting. Can everyone make sure that any phones are turned off? I'm doing the same thing myself, just in case the phone rings. Right. First of all, have we got any apologies for absence, please? I don't think we have.
No apologies.
Okay. Minutes of the last meeting. Are all cabinet members happy with the minutes of the last meeting? If anyone isn't, could they speak up now, please? Otherwise, I shall assume everyone is happy with them. Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest from any members of the cabinet, please, for any item on the agenda? No declarations of interest. Any announcements from any cabinet member, please? Can you use raised hand if you need to do that? Philip.
I just thought I'd mention that members and the public indeed will be concerned at the publicity given to the prospect of some major changes to the household waste and recycling centres. The possibility of closure of 2 sites within the county of West Sussex, one of which could be Billingshurst, and the suggestion of the introduction of charges, reintroduction, should I say, of charges for soil and hardcore. This is something that I, as the cabinet member, view with considerable concern. I am talking to officers to make sure that our great concern is fed through to those making the decisions. We understand the financial difficulties that the county finds itself in, but if there was any question of closing the Billingshurst tip, particularly without an expansion of the times, dates and facilities at Hop-Oast, would cause a massive problem, particularly given that Horsham is developing faster and to a greater extent than any other town in West Sussex. I hope sincerely that West Sussex do not reintroduce charges for hardcore, because we know from last time there was a problem of adulteration and contamination of residual waste bins. John MacArthur had photographs of concrete and bricks in residual waste bins. And the fact is, if you make it more difficult to get rid of waste, you will get more unacceptable removal of waste. And also, I hope County will remember that when they introduced charges, last time for soil and hardcore, they made an estimate of the likely income they would get from charges. And it came out, the eventual returns were something like 1/6 of the figure that they had estimated. And just finally, anecdotally, we do not want a repeat of the lady who went to Hop-Oast, which was reported to me when the charges were in operation. And she had a lavatory seat to get rid of. And they said, is it plastic or is it wood? Because if it is wood, you can deposit it in the wood skip free of charge. If it is plastic, we regard it as construction waste and you must pay £4. I'm sorry to repeat that story from the last time there were charges, but frankly, we don't want that. Just to say, we view these potential changes very seriously, and we're going to do all we can to influence County not to close the Billingshurst tip and not to reintroduce charges for hardcore and soil. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Philip. Just to say that in a West Sussex leaders call, I made a point to the leader of West Sussex that we need Billingshurst kept open, and in fact we should have an expansion of Hot Post rather than the opposite. So those points I think have well and truly been made. Peter.
A quiz. Hip hip hooray, it's gone. What am I talking about?
Can't think. Ah, yes. Is that it?
That's it. Yeah.
Thank you. For those who may not know, I think we're talking about pop-up cycle lanes in Horsham. Jonathan.
I'm not sure if it's hip hip hooray, we're only tier 2, whereas I think we should be tier 1, but obviously tier 2 is going to have some impact, but hopefully I will be sending an email out to everybody over the weekend saying that the capital will be open and the cinema, and so will the leisure centres, and our parks and countryside will be open as well from December the 3rd. So good news there. I hope we can move to tier 1. We must be close, and that may be achievable before Christmas. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you. No more announcements by anyone. Glenn, anything?
Nothing from me, Leader.
Okay. There are no public questions as far as I know, Liz? No
public questions.
Okay, we then move on to item 6 on the agenda, which is the update on the council's financial position. They're on pages 11 to 20 of the agenda. I'll just preface, though, that by some various comments here. Basically, there's a high degree of uncertainty around the COVID-19 recession, and we also have Brexit looming on the horizon. So it's made it impossible on this occasion, as we would normally do, to prepare a full medium-term financial strategy. We basically are going to produce or attempt one in January, and certainly we need one by February. But I think whatever we say and do, I don't think anyone can doubt that probably in the whole history of HDC, this must have been the most uncertain time for preparing a budget that we've ever faced as a council. The report suggests a level of overspend on the current financial year of £5 million, although this has now risen to £5.4 million due to the November lockdown. In September and October, we did see some recovery, but it's now been knocked back again, and clearly by the latest lockdown. We've received £1.1 million in grant from the government for some of our income losses in the first 4 months of this year. An assumption we will receive this grant is in the figures. The position next year and beyond is showing a predicted deficit rising from nearly 2 million next year to 3 million by 2024-25. In addition, I ask you to note our current and likely future financial position. The report contains 2 recommendations to council. The first is for a new pricing structure at Southwater Country Park to help manage car parking demand during busy periods. And the second is for a £70,000 capital budget for bin weighing software for trade waste. The software will allow us to ensure our trade customers' payments cover the cost of the disposal. We need these decisions now because of the lead in times is necessary to put the changes in place for April. And the recommendations are on pages 11 and 12 of your papers. Any cabinet member got any points they want to make, please? No?
Councillor Vickers has her hand up. Sorry, Councillor Vickers, I think, would like to speak.
Claire.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I just wanted to comment on the Southwater Country Park new pricing structure, and I'd like to thank the officers and the cabinet member for leisure for the consultation that took place with the parish council. I think it's a sensible approach and I support that, and thank you for your recommendations. I should be supporting those as well.
Is every cabinet member happy with the recommendations that appear on pages 11 and 12 then? Okay. Anyone who's unhappy, please unmute and speak now. Okay, thank you. Sorry, my iPad is not totally cooperating. Bear with me a second. Okay, apologies for that. Okay, the next item is the contract award for provision of wheeled bins tender. It's on pages 21 to 26. Philip.
Thank you, Leader. This is a fairly straightforward, I hope it's a straightforward issue. Basically, the contract for the supply of wheeled bins has expired and we need a new contract to keep us with a ready supply. And we've had a tendering exercise. The identity of the successful bidder is as an exempt issue, but they have given us a preferential rate. This will make sure that we've got 4 years of supply going forward. And it's because the total cost is more than 250,000 that I need to present this item to you tonight. Just to say that Councillor Mike Croker raised the issue of, quite rightly, of recycled material, and the answer is 30% will be from recycled material. There are a lot of items that are made with recycled material where you have to have a mixture of recycled material and new material. And this is one such case. So 30%, it's the maximum that reasonably we can achieve in terms of the use of recycled material. I'm very grateful to Councillor Croker for raising the issue, but we are doing the maximum that we can to make use of recycled material. I don't think, Leader, there's much more I can say. This will enable us to have a reasonable stock for the next 4 years, and I hope members of Cabinet will support this decision. Thank you, Leader.
Any comments from Cabinet members, please? Any comments from other members who are on this call? No, okay. Are we happy with the recommendations then on page 21? Anyone who's unhappy, please speak. Okay, everyone's happy with that recommendation. Thank you. Okay, next item is item 8 on the agenda. Horsham's first local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, LC WIP. Peter.
Thank you, Leader. The aim of this is from our government is to make cycling and walking a much more natural choice for shorter journeys or even as part of a longer journey. The County Council approached us and other districts, etc., with a view to developing something called LC WIPs, local cycling walking infrastructure plans for all major towns. Most took up this challenge and a group was formed to cover all those involved in West Sussex. They're being developed in Worthing, Chichester, Crawley, Midhurst, and a couple of other places. The County Council is covering the gaps, and it's looking at 6 long-distance inter-town routes, one of which is Crawley to Horsham. There was quite a lot of guidance on this, and in accordance with the Department of Transport, we focused our WIP on cycling and walking routes within the town and routes into town from other surrounding settlements. The key aims, these are high-level evidence-based documents, so not something we've just made up. We've used a lot of outside stuff to come in to looking at this based on all sorts of other items. And the key aims are to identify cycling and walking structure improvements for future investments, to actively consider how to improve cycling and walking both in local planning and transport policies, assist when we're bidding for future funding. And I'll stress now that apart from the forthcoming tranche 2, which we don't know exactly what this is, we will need money to put forward anything new. We consulted widely. We set up a stakeholder group, and with the assistance of our consultants, we chose 5 cycling corridors and 6 walking corridors to take forward. Now, what this means is that we've got these items completed, and if any money comes in quickly, suddenly, we've got something that we can throw at it. It's not quite shovel ready, but it is as close as one can do for this sort of thing. We included the public and we got back a total of just over 200 responses. You'll see in the feedback that we've also included a summary paper of all what stakeholders and other public told us. And it's appended on the report that captures all the points raised and our response to them. We'll use this to modify or design any future LC whip. Just out of interest, the LC whip needs updating at least every 5 years. The next steps. The government has said that local authorities with LC whips will be far better placed to secure future funding. And as I said earlier, that's why this plan has been put forward. Our LC whip will feed into the overall West Sussex cycling and walking network. And the County Council intends to make a combined priority list of routes to be put forward as funding comes available. Many of these routes are likely to require, or certainly will need external funding. And it is envisaged, again, as I said earlier, this list will serve to support future funding bids, as well as being a directing factor in SIL and 106 contributions. I will, however, stress that in the overall context, we will continue to consider all users, bike, foot, bus, train, car, scooters, and if the economy does go down the pan, as 1 or 2 are forecasting, we'll include horse-drawn carts as well. We did suffer under the ill-advised tranche 1, which I talked about earlier briefly, and this has actually severely damaged the viability of our own LC whip. Therefore, what we need is a scheme to come forward soon where it's cast iron and good. The one I suggest, which I passed through to you before, is running from the Bishopric towards Tambridge School. Finally, thanks please to all officers and other people involved, but especially through to Nigel Weston, who's worked really very hard on actually putting forward, which is a good document, which I recommend because it's really on a very complex subject. It's quite brief. It notifies us what we need to do, what we need to put right within the context of which the LC whip was put forward. So I urge Cabinet to agree to the recommendations set out on page 27 so that we can move forward to the adoption of Horsham's first local cycling and walking infrastructure plan. End of speech. Any questions?
Any questions from Cabinet members, please? Claire.
Thank you, Leader. Just very briefly, I just want to add my thanks also to Nigel Wester. I know he's worked extremely hard on this. It's been a long time coming, and it's really good to see the document and the explanation that the Cabinet member has given. I'd also like to add my thanks to Councillor Burgess for the amount of work he's done with this. I know he's done an awful lot. So thank you to both.
Okay, any other Cabinet member comments, please? I thought you might want to say something, Ruth.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I do very much welcome the fact that Horsham has developed an LC whip. It's a great first step. The key outputs of an LC whip are a network map and a prioritised programme of infrastructure improvement. The document we've got so far says within it that it doesn't have a network map yet. It also doesn't have a prioritised programme of infrastructure improvements. These are really important in actually unlocking the funding, which is bound to be difficult and competitive to get hold of. Although West Sussex are prioritising routes, they are looking at their own routes and competing bids from districts and boroughs all the way across the county. So what I'd like to ask is, how will Cabinet ensure that it's kept informed of progress in developing a more complete network map and in doing the additional work to prioritise and firm up on potential routes so that we are best placed to win those additional funding pots?
Peter, do you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, I think we made it quite clear that we're giving our routes and the prioritisation across the whole county is with the County Council. I also stress that the LC whip is a living document, and though it has to be redone every 5 years, we can change it at any stage. Nigel is looking a bit concerned at this stage because he's just finished it. But if we need anything, I also point out that I've already suggested one of the routes or part of one of the routes is highly prioritised. I'm quite sure that we can give attached to each of them, Nigel, our prioritisation. But really, we want funding and we want to look to county to see. But I'll come up and say this is a living document. It'll be amended probably every 6 months or so.
Nigel, do you want to comment?
Just that I'm aware of the prioritisation, and we are owed some work from consultants free of charge, WSP, to look at the LC whip and then prioritise the routes. So that is a piece of work to be done in the future.
Are you happy with that, Ruth?
Well, thank you. That's helpful to know. Could I just ask how we as members and you as Cabinet will be keeping in touch with that additional work?
Nigel or Peter?
I'll start. Whatever happens, it will appear from time to time for the councillors at group and also to any PDAGs which are concerned to discuss any updates. Initially, I'd like a period, and I'm sure Nigel would, a period of about 3 months where we just let things settle down and then we can bring updates in. Over to you, Nigel.
I was just going to say that I'd report it back up through to the PDAG, and whether PDAG brings it up to Cabinet. Yeah.
I'm keen,
Okay.
obviously, that we take full advantage of any opportunities to get additional funding and outside assistance on this.
I think it goes without saying, Ruth, and I can't see you, Ruth, letting us get away with anything on this one. Don't know why I think that, but I'm sure you won't. Anyway, thank you very much. Any other points anyone wants to make, please? Okay, the recommendations are those on page 27. Are we happy to accept those? Anyone who isn't, please speak now. Thank you. Jane, just to say that on the version I'm looking at, I do not have anything on item 15. I just have it on an agenda. So could you pick up on item 15 when we get to it, please? Okay, Jane? Yeah, thank you. Okay, item number 9, electric vehicle charge point network. Paul.
Thank you, Leader. If you recall, we approved the strategy in March of exploring EV charge point networks in conjunction with West Sussex County Council, who was the lead, with other district councils. Everybody else chipped in as district councils except for Chichester. We worked with West Sussex and other councils to get the suppliers and to get an approved list of suppliers. As the value of the contractor was in excess of OJEU thresholds, basically we had to do a fully compliant tender under OJEU, which is the EU tendering process, basically. West Sussex led the process. Horsham district had very significant input to the process. There were 53 suppliers looked at it, 4 submitted bids, and basically one supplier in the end met the criterion of quality and ability to meet the requirements as done. Essentially, that supplier is called Liberty Charge, which is now public domain. It's consortium. That consortium includes, amongst others, this is not exclusive list, Virgin Media, company called Zook, I've never heard of, but fine. Energy Franklin, and of course you've got an engineer involved in there called Kia Construction that we know. So quite a wide consortium bringing all sorts of expertise to this. And essentially, I'm recommending to Cabinet to award the concession supplier as detailed in Appendix 1, and that we join in with West Sussex to move forward on the EV charge point network.
Any Cabinet member comments, please? Well, clearly, it's vital that we get a very good network of EV charging points, because without it, the idea of getting rid of internal combustion engines by 2030 or new ones is not going to work. I have my own doubts as to how rapidly we can expand it, but we've got to play our part in this, I think, absolutely.
Thank you, Leader. As part of this, actually, I asked the officers to make sure that the first set of EV charge points that were done, so to speak, were the ones that already exist, which are either obsolescent, obsolete, or non-functioning in our area.
Okay. Anyone else want to make any comments, please? Okay, the recommendations are on page 93. Are we happy to accept those? Okay. Anyone on mute who isn't happy, please? Okay, public space protection order is item 10. Tricia.
Yes, thank you, Leader. The purpose of this report is to inform the decision-making process concerning whether HDC exercises its powers under the Anti-Social Behaviour Crime and Policing Act of 2014 and continues to maintain a public spaces protection order. The PSPO aims to address a number of key issues raised by members of the Community Safety Partnership that are having a detrimental effect on the quality of life for residents and visitors to the district. The existing PSPO prohibitions include nuisance behaviour relating to alcohol, antisocial use of vehicles, dog fouling, lack of control of dogs, unauthorised access and nuisance behaviour, and that's Parker or Horsham town only, and racing of horse-drawn carriages on any dual carriageway, including the A24, the 264 and the A29. In addition to these existing prohibitions, the following additional prohibitions are proposed for inclusion. No intoxication or possession of psychoactive substances, and for Horsham town only, no unlicensed busking, no selling of periodicals, no antisocial behaviour or nuisance behaviour in car parks and stairwells, and no drinking of alcohol in the causeway and the Gardens of Remembrance. The Community Safety Team, in conjunction with other agencies forming Community Safety Partnership, have compiled significant evidence to support the need to introduce these prohibitions, which existing powers either do not address, as they do not exist, have been repealed previously, or can only be applied after problems escalate. The Community Safety Team aims to secure the support of Horsham District Council in deciding to introduce an updated PSPO to protect the majority of law-abiding citizens and contribute towards the district's reputation as being a very safe place in which to live, work and visit. The Cabinet is recommended to exercise its powers under the Antisocial Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act of 2014, to consult with the public on an updated Public Spaces Protection Order and delegate approval to the Director of Community Services in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Community and Health Wellbeing to implement an updated PSPO as detailed below, giving consideration to consultation feedback. And it will be out for consultation, but the hope is that it will be in place by the 1st of April. So the reasons for recommendation are to allow Horsham District Council and Sussex Police to tackle the behaviour outlined within the report, therefore protecting the quality of life of those who live in, work in, and visit our neighbourhood or district. Are there any questions?
Paul.
Thank you, Lena. If I heard correctly or read correctly, the sale of periodicals, how does this affect, whether you like them or not? I mean, how does this affect the big issue sellers who sell the big issue, which is in fact which is the only way they can raise funds to remain to not be homeless, because big issue sellers need to sell those magazines or newspapers or whatever you want to call them to remain off the streets.
Thank you, Paul. Adam, do you want to answer that? I think they're protected, but like you can just confirm it.
Yeah, so I think that's a good question and a fair comment. And the way in which we word it, it will mean that we won't be preventing people from selling the big issue. We want to target a particular type of periodical, which is actually been shown to take advantage of individuals. So it won't target people who are selling the big issue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Philip.
Local authorities, thank you, Leader. Local authorities got more involved in the area of antisocial behaviour because of the substantial reduction in police officers and the accompanying unwillingness of the police to get involved in a lot of the antisocial behaviour issues that previously they had. I just wonder if I could ask Tricia whether her experience, particularly in her involvement with the crime, I've forgotten what the exact title is, the panel over which the Police and Crime Commissioner sits, whether there's any evidence as yet that the recruitment drive to basically reinstate, it seems to me, the numbers that were cut some years ago, whether that's actually making any difference to the police response to antisocial behaviour. Because if it is, I suppose to some extent, it's going to reduce the burden on local authorities to fill the gap. The other, just in passing, I got an email from the, again, I'm never quite sure of the initials, PCSO, have I got that right, Trish? Yeah.
Yes.
Wrote to me and said, which is very nice, you know, I'm in your patch, I'm looking after your patch. Can you tell me if there's any issues I should be aware of? Well, since West Chiltington is not actually a well-known crime hotspot, I said at this moment there's nothing I could really point to, but I really appreciated the email, and I would let him know if there were any issues that came up where I thought it'd be useful to let you know, to keep him informed, which was a positive, I have to say, was a pleasant experience to get some contact. Thank you, Leader.
Yes. You said originally, I think the first point was, are the extra police that we've all been promised going to make any difference? The answer to that is hopefully yes. But the whole point of this PSCO, Philip, is the fact that it's outdated and we need these extra additions in order to tackle, in particular, a very well-known upset in the town centre, which is a group of people in the Causeway who, you know, really are upsetting people. So we have been pretty powerless, and the police, as you rightly say, have taken a backward step. But I think a lot of it is to do with the fact that it's a case of police shortages, and we are seeing a gradual drip feed of extra policing in the district. So that's the answer to those, I hope. Has that answered you? And I'm glad,
yes, thank you.
I'm glad the PCSO contacted you. And I'm very glad that West Chiltington is such a wonderfully safe place to live. And the aim of this is to make the rest of the district as good.
I'd be interested to know who else got the email, but I judging by his hand up, Paul Clark got one as well. So I don't know how extensive these PCSO emails were, but it's a positive sign, and we should be grateful for that.
Well, obviously we know who are privileged people within the cabinet.
I'm sure you've got one, Ray.
Well, I don't think I did, actually. I must be very upset by that, mustn't I? Okay.
Any other questions? If not, can I ask that the Cabinet recommends or approves the recommendations on page 102?
Anyone who's unhappy, please unmute. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Tricia. Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I am not aware of any matters that have been referred to us by Overview and Scrutiny. Item 12 is to note the forward plan. Anyone got any comments on the forward plan, please? No, I shall take that as noted. And there are no matters of special urgency. Liz, I think now we need to stop the recording because we're going into closed session. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. I think you're meant to read out the statement which explains why the part of the Act that it is exempt for.
Well, at this point, you usually pass me a piece of paper, but I shall read up. I don't know.
Yes.
Is it the same one as I've got on the Cabinet agenda, or is it a different one?
It's very similar. I sent you something very...
Well, shall I read this and you tell me what's missing?
Okay.
Or unless you want to read it.
I can see if I could read it, I can find it, if you bear with me 1 second.
Okay.
Okay. So this is so Councillor Dawes, the chairman, he moves that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the last 3 items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, which is information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. And in all the circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information.
Okay, thank you. So you need to stop the